evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this special session on change management, journey from comfort to growth zone. My name is Jatinder Kaur, and it's an absolute pleasure to be your host for this insightful session organized by Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. Before we dive into today's program, I would like to take a few moments to introduce the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce and share some of the impactful work we are doing to support businesses and professionals across the globe. Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, PCC, is a non for profit organization that got established in 2017 and we are headquartered in USA. The organization envisions to facilitate global and local business communities with a networking forum wherein they can build new relationships based on mutual reciprocity. So, PCC strives to provide its membership base with two approaches, that's qualitative and quantitative. And we have a strict no religion, no politics policy in place. We believe in diversity and inclusion. We are spread across 21 chapters and we have three ethos. We work on three C's of ethos, that's capital building, capacity building, and community building. Punjabi Chamber of Commerce also has a charitable arm, that's PCF, under which we have worked to support as society. And some of recent work that we have done, our oxygen plant was set up in Mohali in partnership with Rotary International in HP. And very recently, on this July 14th, we made history in Ludhiana by planting 1 lakh trees in just 1 hour under Earth Hour project. This project was a joint initiative by Punjabi Chamber Foundation and Sambhav Foundation. These are our few communication campaigns. Another opportunity that Punjabi Chamber of Commerce provides to our member is one of our flagship events, that's Global Member Mixer. Global Member Mixer is an exclusive event that acts as a bridge between the local and the global business acumen. Esteemed members from diverse backgrounds come together to form strategic alliances, fostering business growth and innovative in an environment where possibilities are boundless. We are also excited to announce that we will be soon upcoming with our import-export group. So if you're interested to join us, please use the link flashing in the chat box. PCC offers two kind of memberships that have certain level of advantages. So if you want to join us or you want to become our member, please use the link to fill in the Google form. Our team will reach out to you for being member. Now, without further ado, it is my distinct honor to introduce our esteemed speaker for today, Mr. Hitesh Kumar Gulati, the founder of Diversity Ace Business Consulting. Mr. Gulati is a motivational speaker with over 23 years of experience as a human capital transformation and change management consultant. His remarkable journey includes conducting 781 training sessions and empowering over 37,000 professionals to navigate change and achieve their full potential. With 127 LinkedIn recommendations and 140 glowing Google reviews, Mr. Gulati is recognized not only for his deep expertise, but also for his ability to inspire and drive meaningful change. Today, he'll guide us through the challenging yet rewarding process of moving from our comfort zones to growth zone, which is an essential journey in today's dynamic world. Now, without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Hitesh Kumar Gulati. Over to you, sir. You're on mute.
Thank you so much, Jatinder, for inviting me here to take you all on a journey of change management, a journey from comfort to growth zone. So before I start, special thanks to Mr. Gary Pasricha and all dear members of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce to invite me here on this particular platform. Before I start this particular session on change management, a journey from comfort zone to growth zone, let me share it with you that the entire session we'll be dividing it into three different parts. So those three different parts would be first phase would be talking first part would be talking about the phases of transition. Second part will talk more about how to develop and embrace growth. And in third part, we'll take discovery and gap analysis as the starting point of change management process. And towards the last, we'll conclude with how to transit from comfort to growth zone smoothly. So this is how we'll divide the entire session on change management, a journey from comfort zone to growth zone. So when we talk about change, we all understand we basically go through three different phases: the current state, the transition state, and the future state. And we all know that current state is the most preferred state because we are in a comfort zone and we are happy and feeling safe and in control. Whereas the future state, when we say future state, that is unknown to us. And the transition state is the one which either creates stress or anxiety. Now, how it creates stress and anxiety, we'll further delve into this, where we'll talk about four different stages when we go through a change process. So, those four different stages, if you see it on the screen, which takes us from a fixed mindset towards growth mindset, those four different stages are: first is the denial, second is resistance, third is exploration, and fourth is the commitment stage. Before I start sharing about these four different stages, and you can see a lot of confusion on the screen, but I will share those confusion part later on when we'll go into the third stage, which is called as exploration. And I'll share these four different stages with an example, because with examples we are able to relate that situation in a much easier way. So let's suppose a company or an organization plans to bring in change in their particular processes or systems, right? And just to give you an example, um, let's suppose Mr. Gary is planning to bring in some changes in Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, some process and systems. Uh, I'm taking the positive example for Mr. Gary, and the negative example or the negative leader will be Hitesh here, because with examples we can understand the things in much better way, right? And I'll share it in a very lighter but in a very easy way so that we all can understand that. So whenever any particular leader proposes any changes in the process and systems and communicate it to their particular team members, the first reaction that comes, whether we are saying it in front of the leader or not, is denial. So regardless of whether that change would be positive or negative, we are generally in a denial mode because we are in the comfort zone, and we have followed a good set of practices over the time, and we don't want to change our nature to adapt with the new practices, right? So that basically keeps us in denial. But as I said, if Mr. Gary is a very positive leader, and if we all have worked, just a hypothetical situation, if we all have worked with him over the last 2 3 years, we all understand if he proposes something that would be beneficial for the individual as well as for the organization also. So let's suppose there are 100 people. If I am supposing there are 100 people here, 70% of the people will go till the second stage, which is called as resistance. Now resistance is a better stage than denial, but I would not say it's a positive stage, it's still a negative stage. Resistance means we are partially ready to go with that particular changes, but not fully ready. And what is the reason behind that? Why we are not fully ready? Because we are in the fear zone. In this particular zone, as we are trying out something new, we are not aware that what kind of changes will come and what would be the end result of that, right? So in fear zone, what happens is generally we doubt our own ability sometimes. We become stubborn also. We are easily angered, and and in fear zone, we don't want to try out something new. Means in this case, if we take the first two stages, denial and resistance, that basically keeps us in a mode in which we are glorifying the past. And if we are glorifying the past too much, that will keep us in a state of confusion. Now, as I said right in the starting of this particular slide, like Mr. Gary is a very positive leader. So, in spite of those particular, you can say fear and comfort, also there would be still 30% of the people who will go to the third stage, which is exploration. And these 30% of the people will be only those people who also want to try out something new in their life, right? So those 30% of the people will go to the third stage, which is exploration, and the word exploration itself says exploration is experimentation or discovery. Now, if we take 20 to 30% changes in processes and systems, discovery and experimentation, when we are going through this, we all understand 20-30% is again not a small change. So there are chances that the failure rate would be much higher than the success rate. And if the failure rate is higher than the success rate, we all can understand that out of 30% of the people, still 25% of the people will fall back to resistance. And if they'll fall back to resistance, just to satisfy their ego, they'll talk to Hitesh. As I said, I am a negative leader here. I am playing a role of that particular negative leader here. If they'll come back to resistance, those 25% people will say, Hitesh, you were right, that no changes are going to come in this particular organization in terms of new process or system. And this is a very real fact that I'm sharing, even though we don't say it on the face of our particular leaders or managers, but inside we'll go and talk to those particular people that Hitesh, you were right, that those changes will not come into place in this particular organization, because somehow they are satisfying their ego on that part. Whereas if they talk to their particular subconscious mind, which is called as the writer, they'll feel that if they'll get another chance with Mr. Gary, they'll be a part of that particular change, right? So just to satisfy their ego, they'll say, Hitesh, you were right. And in case of 70% being there in the first two stages, influence was the major factor which kept 70% of the people in first two stages, which is denial, the comfort zone, and resistance, the fear zone. But those 5% people who are still left in that exploration, discovery, and exploration, in spite of a lot of chaos, indecisiveness, and as the success rate is lower than the failure rate, so there are chances that the energy level of people will be down in this particular stage. But those 5% people who still persist in that particular stage of exploration with the leader, Mr. Gary Pastricha, they'll be able to find out the gaps, and based on those particular gaps, they'll be able to find out the alternative solutions for that also. Now, if you see again on the right hand side, there is one three words written: joy of confusion. Now we all understand confusion either breaks us or it makes us. So those 5% of the people, in spite of that chaos, indecisiveness, low energy also, they'll not give up, and and out of that joy of confusion, that particular change will no more be a load on them, and they'll take it as a challenge or a game. And the moment any task becomes a game or challenge for us, we all understand that confusion doesn't break us, it makes us. So we'll come up with creative and innovative solutions, and that is the reason how we'll be able to reach the last stage, which is called as commitment, in which we'll become much more focused. We'll be working with teamwork, cooperation, and we'll be able to maintain the balance in between the team members and the leaders. And as you see on the top of this particular slide, cry of joy. If 95 or 97% of the people were not with Mr. Gary for bringing in the change in the process and systems, if the end result is 2 or 5% of the people they are able to bring in that change, ultimately, if we implement those particular changes phase wise, those 2 or 5% of the people with Mr. Gary Pastricha will also be able to take the other 95 or 97% people along. So as I shared with you, when we go through these four different stages, there are different signs that we have in each phase, and I have already explained it, but I'll still explain it. Denial is our comfort zone in which we are feeling safe and in control, and resistance is our fear zone in which we lack self confidence, we find excuses, and we extend our comfort zone. But if you I'm sorry, we find excuses and we are easily affected by others' opinions. So as I said, 70% of the people will be there in the first two zones only due to the reason of influence. And we all understand that negative influence acts faster than the positive influence. But the moment those people who entered the third stage, which is exploration, they'll go into learning zone. They'll be able to deal with challenges and problems. They'll acquire new skills, and they'll be able to extend their comfort zone. And finally, those 2 or 5% of the people who reach the last stage, which is commitment, which is the growth zone, they'll be able to find the purpose, live with dreams, set new goals, and conquer objectives. So again, if we see all these four stages, the different signs that we can have in these stages. In denial, generally we have how good things were in the past, right? And we have numbness, we refuse to hear new information also. Rest of the things I have already shared in all those four phases. Now, if we take again those four stages: denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. The transformation point is when we go from resistance to exploration. And there are three pillars which helps us to overcome resistance to change. So those three pillars are: first is education and communication should be coupled with belief system. Second is co-designing solutions should be coupled with negotiation, which will help us overcome resistance. And third is facilitation and support coupled with conviction, which will again help us in overcoming resistance to change. Now, how these three pillars they help us in overcoming resistance to change, I'll take one by one each pillar and I'll explain it to you. The moment, as I gave you an example of Mr. Gary, the moment he plans to bring in changes, 25 to 30% changes in the process and systems, it becomes very necessary to educate and communicate it to the people down the line, right from the department head to the other levels. It becomes very important to convey those changes along with other change catalysts in that particular organization. And these leaders should be chosen by him in such a way where they also have a strong belief system of bringing in that particular thing. So education and communication should be coupled with belief system. This is one pillar which will strengthen that overcoming resistance to change. Second way of bringing in the change, if we see the second pillar, co-designing solutions, we all understand that one way of bringing in the change can be the leaders, change catalysts, as well as the change leader. They design the solutions, they make it other people to understand those things, and they implement it on the ground. But the other better way of implementing those changes, where there is an acceptance by a lot of people in the organization, would be co-designing solutions. So co-designing solutions here would mean when we are going in for those changes in process and systems, it becomes very important for those change catalysts and leaders to take inputs from people, suggestions from people, whether it is at department head level or down the level from department head also. Once they start giving the suggestions, they somehow co-own those particular suggestions and they'll feel a part of that particular change, right? But then again, in this particular point, there's one more important point, which is called as expectation settings. Expectation settings should be made clear by the change catalysts and leaders that we'll take the viewpoints from the CEO of the company, we'll take viewpoints from people across the organization also, and based on the inputs from them and CEO's vision, we'll co-design the solutions. In this way, they'll also understand that 100% of the solutions which are being recommended by them will not be implemented, but somehow those would be implemented where it matches with the organization objectives as laid by the CEO vision also, right? So once that co-designing solutions is there, we all understand when suggestions are coming from n number of people, there would be a stage where change catalysts or leaders have to negotiate on solutions and they have to pick up the best solutions among, let's say, 50 or 100 solutions which are being proposed for those particular changes. So co-designing solutions should be coupled with negotiation that will again help us to overcome resistance to change. Now to share the third pillar, which is again the most important pillar, facilitation and support coupled with conviction. Now there's a difference between conviction and belief system, but I'll talk about this later on. Let me first talk about facilitation and support. We all understand when we are working in any particular organization, there would be people with different intellectual levels. So might be there would be one set of people to whom, if you share the objectives, they are able to understand those things at one time, or maybe if you repeat it twice, they are able to understand. But there would be another set of people who are kind of intermediate, or you can say who will take some time to understand what kind of solutions you are proposing or what kind of changes you are proposing. So for those kind of people, maybe the objective has to be made clear 3 or 4 times, or maybe let's say 5 times. And let's say there is a third set of people who are not that intellectual, but they are good in following the orders and executing the things, right? So if they're not that much intellectual and they take some time to process the information, in that case, maybe the leader has to clear the objectives of this change maybe 8 times or 9 times during the change management process. So why I'm quoting this particular example of 3 different intellectual level is because based on this, you can well understand how facilitative and supportive the leader has to become when we are going from resistance to exploration. Because as I said, exploration is a hanger stage. If you are not able to take people or means push them in such a way where they are able to understand the objectives, they'll not stick to the third stage, they'll fall back to resistance. So leader has to become more facilitative in nature and supportive in nature, and it should be coupled with conviction. Now, why I said conviction, not belief? Belief is I am having this, you can say, thing in my mind that I'll be able to bring in the change. But conviction comes when we are having the facts and experiences in front of us. So conviction is strengthened by facts and experiences. So if facilitation and support is coupled with conviction, this is the third pillar which will help us in overcoming resistance to change. So from this, if we understand the transformation point is when we are moving from resistance to exploration. And if you still remember those stages, denial and resistance keeps us towards fixed mindset in which we'll be having a low stability, high chaos would be there, high emotional stress would be there, control will become a major issue, high undirected energy would be there, and we'll always glorify the past. Conflict will also start to increase and resistance starts to build here. Whereas if we become more towards the right hand side, which was about exploration and commitment, will become more stable and resilient. High adversity quotient would be there, and control will be overpowered by discovery. We'll be able to channelize our energy supply in different situations. Future oriented course of mind will be there, and we'll be able to resolve conflict. And lastly, the most important, joy of confusion starts here. And let me share it with you because I always prefer to acknowledge the source. This joy of confusion word has been taken from one of my friend speakers who has already taken a session, entire session on joy of confusion. From that joy of confusion word, I have built other words: stay in confusion, cry in confusion, and cry of joy. Right? So from this, we can well relate to that like a pendulum, if we want to have a growth mindset like a pendulum, we have to continuously oscillate between exploration, which is the learning zone, and commitment, which is called as the growth zone. So there are some certain dimensions which helps us to be there in the learning zone, and there are certain dimensions which helps us to be there in the growth zone. So we'll take learning zone first, where we'll talk about what are those 4 dimensions in learning zone. In learning zone, we have to act as a facilitator, and facilitator is basically a person who adopts an approach of asking versus telling. So one way of solving a particular thing is I'm saying this is the right way of solving the thing. Another way is I can ask my teammates, do you think this is the right way of solving this particular problem? So facilitator always adopts an approach of asking versus telling, and this thought process eventually pushes a culture to own the solutions to their own problems. So the team members, they also feel valued, and this is how the creativity and innovation comes into the place at the workplace. Second is leveraging diversity. We all understand that every person is different in terms of their experience, in terms of their capabilities and thinking style. So approach the conversation with inquisitiveness. Notice your reaction to the queries of others and listen and understand different perspectives of the teammates. That will also help us to learn different ways of solving a particular problem which comes in the change management process. Third is innovativeness, which is designing ways to capture ideas like setting up a suggestion box around the workplace. So one way was means setting up the suggestion boxes around the workplace. Another way can be we can have one-to-one meetings or let's say anonymous survey also during the change management process in order to take input from the people. And last, the most important, which is resilience. If we don't have resilience, maximum chances are there that we can fall back from learning zone to fear zone. And resilience is basically built on three different dimensions. First is the ambiguity threshold, and ambiguity threshold we understand is uncertainty. Whenever we face any uncertain situations, generally we jump to conclusion, what if I'll not be able to solve this, what will be the end result? And the moment this thinking comes in my particular head in this way, I'm going to a problem oriented approach. The right approach should be, what might be the situation, I have plan B or plan C for this. That will help me to increase the ambiguity threshold. Now it's very easily I have conveyed it to you. For resilience, we have to increase the ambiguity threshold, but we need two more dimensions in order to support that ambiguity threshold. First is your internal monologue. If the internal monologue is positive, we'll be able to work on the second dimension, which is called as energy supply. And the end result is, if we have a positive internal monologue, we'll be able to channelize that energy, which is energy supply. And lastly, we'll be able to increase the ambiguity threshold. And as I said, these are the three dimensions which will help us to become more resilient in nature, and which will also help us to persist there in the exploration in longer run and go to the next stage, which is commitment. Now, when we reach commitment, we have to develop our growth zone by strengthening again the four dimensions if you see it on the screen. The first is achievement drive. Achievement drive is basically an aspiration for significant achievement, enhancing the skills, or attaining high standards. Or in other words, it is a sustained and repetitive efforts to accomplish something difficult by working with purpose, excellence, risk, feedback, and sometimes power and affiliation too. Second is change catalyst. So that means initiating, driving, and managing change by recognizing the need for change and removing barriers. And as I said, influence is one thing on which, as change catalysts or leaders, that we have to ignore, especially the negative influence I'm saying. We should have our own mindset and we should focus more on present focused thinking. The moment we go too much into the past, we all understand it will either develop, you can say, stress, or there would be depression. And the moment we go too much into the future, we are going too much into the planning phase, that sometimes also lands up in anxiety. So we have to be more in the present. Second, you can say the highest percentage should be for the future, and let's say 15 or 20% should be given to the past experiences also, because that lays the foundation for any particular change too. Third is collaboration and cooperation. We all understand this is a time of shared decision making. So gone are the days where the leader used to take decisions on their own. They have changed their particular leadership style also. And we understand that collaboration and cooperation builds creative and engaging relationships across all levels in the organization, where all work together towards a common goal. And lastly, if you don't have a positive self-talk, we all understand, as I said in the learning zone also, if we don't have a positive self-talk, we'll not be able to become resilient in nature. And for become having that positive self-talk, sometimes we should have that distanced self-talk. That means in any time of the day, we should spend time for with ourselves, where the negative influence, we'll be away from that particular negative influence. If you're having that positive distance, positive and distance self-talk. So we'll go to the second part of this particular session. We have spoken about how we can move from a fixed mindset towards a growth mindset, and like a pendulum, how we can be there in the learning zone and growth zone, which will help us to have a growth mindset. So as we started the journey from comfort zone, the topic was comfort zone to growth zone. So we all know that when we are going from comfort zone to growth zone, we have to pass through fear zone also, and we have to pass through the learning zone also. But at the end, if we want to have a fixed mindset, we can be there in the denial and resistance. Or if we want to have a progressive or growth mindset, we have to oscillate in between the learning zone and growth zone, irrespective of any particular era. Second part we'll talk about when we go for any change management exercise on what all things we should work. So we all know if some company is having a good reputation in the market, that is basically the brand image of the organization in the country or let's say globally. So that is the outer core. But if that outer core is showing it to us, that means there is the inner core which is being nurtured in a proper way. So that means four different verticals are being nurtured in the right way. Those are people, processes, competency, and culture. So we all understand from this. If you see the quote by Alan Rufus, which says, "Your inner strength is your outer foundation." So if the inner strength is nurtured properly, obviously that will reflect on the brand image of the organization. So how we can strengthen this, or how we work on this, you can say the initial phase of change management. There is one thing which is called as discovery and gap analysis. So how it should be done, the discovery and gap analysis, it can be done in 5 or 6 different steps. I have written 5 only because these are the basic steps which are required, but we can add more steps also. But these steps should be at least covered when we are going initially for change management process, right? First, it's very important to identify the current state by going in for interviews with the CEO, even one-to-one interaction with the department head, studying of current process and SOP, and even workforce analytics, right? So as we started initially with that there are 3 phases. One is our current state, the end one is the future state, and the middle one is the transition state, right? So we'll work more on the transition state here because the future state will be able to know from CEO's vision questionnaire, where we'll understand CEO's vision in terms of people, processes, competencies, and culture. And the current processes, we'll understand it from one-to-one interaction with department head, as well as for the future, we'll also take suggestions from them that what kind of changes do they suggest for these particular initiatives, right? So first, we'll record the CEO's vision questionnaire in terms of those 4 different parameters. Second would be one-to-one interaction with department head. And we all know that every person has a different nature. Certain people will not open up in one-to-one interaction with department head. So for that, there should be third step, which is organization and process feedback. It can be done through anonymous survey questionnaire, where we are not taking the names of the people in that particular questionnaire, but they are giving an anonymous feedback. So it should be done across various bands or level in the organization. And fourth step, which is studying of process and SOPs, will help us to understand the current processes which are being faced in every department. And fifth is workforce analytics. Why workforce analytics? We all understand there are 3 major workforces or 3 major generations which are working in the organization: Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, right? So we have to understand that percentage ratio, which will help us to know what kind of process and systems would be better in this particular organization based on understanding that ratio of the workforce, and it will also help us in understanding the retention ratio in different organizations also. So just to give you an example, there is some figures that I am showing it to you on the screen. And textile, let's say 15%. This is based on the survey for few of the industries that we have done in the past. But I'll quote an example after this. You can say the workforce analytics part that we have done it for them. Textile 15%, Gen Z was 15%, Gen Y was 60%, and Gen X was 25%. Similarly, we did a survey for a group of hospitals in Punjab. They were having a composition of Gen Z as 20%, Gen Y as 70%, and Gen X as 10%. And in education sector, when we did it for our university, it was 10% of Gen Z, Gen Y was 77%, and Gen X was 13%. Automobile sector, it was again for one of the leading players, global players, but they also have a setup in Chandigarh also. So this was done for one of the automobile sector company. I'll not name that company because we all understand, being a consultant, we are not supposed to share the names as per the non-disclosure agreement, NDAs. 15% is Gen Z, 55% is Gen Y, and 30% is Gen X. Now, if I just quote you an example, let's say of education sector, if I quote an example, if any university is planning to bring in some new age courses in their university in next, let's say, 2 years, and this is the composition which is on the screen. Gen Z has 10%, Gen Y has 77%, and Gen X has 13%. They have to change their workforce composition here. That means they have to shift few of the people from Gen X to Gen Z, and even Gen Y percentage should also, few of the people should be shifted from Gen Y to Gen Z. I'm not saying the same workforce can be shifted, but in terms of new hirings, the new hirings, if somebody leaves from Gen Y or Gen X also, more people should be taken in Gen Z, because when it comes to new age courses, those Gen Z and Gen Y people will be able to understand what kind of changes are coming in the market in a much better way as compared to Gen X. So if attrition is there in Gen Y and Gen X, more people should be hired in Gen Z due to the reason of introducing those new age courses in next 2 years, right? Shifting people from one particular age group to another age group is not possible, but hiring new, you can say, age group people who falls under Gen Z, which is up to the age of 24 years, should be hired in that particular sector if you want new age courses to be run successfully in that particular university. Similarly, if we understand four different perspectives, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, all four generations, all three generations, they act in a different way in terms of focus, leadership style, interaction style, and motivation also. If we take focus, Gen X people, they are more bent towards relationship and results, and Gen Y people are focused more towards task and results, whereas Gen Z people are more global and networked. In terms of leadership style, the leadership style of Gen X people is mostly, I'm saying, consensus based. I'm saying mostly. That doesn't mean that generally they are taking consensus based leadership style. People are there who go for consensus based leadership style also, as well as other leadership style also. Whereas Gen Y people, they mostly have competency based leadership style, and Gen Z people have achievement based leadership style. In terms of interaction style of Gen X people, they love to be a team player and they love to have meetings. Whereas the interaction style of Gen Y is either entrepreneurial in nature or intrapreneurial in nature. And we all understand what is the difference between entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial. Being coming from a corporate background, we all understand that. Whereas Gen Z people, their interaction style is more participative in nature. And in terms of motivation of Gen X, they feel motivated when they are being valued and they are being needed in the organization. Whereas Gen Y people, when they have freedom of doing the things in their own way, they feel motivated by that. And Gen Z people, they feel motivated when they are working with bright, other bright and creative people. So this is how, for each and every, you can say, perspective, every generation is having a different way of working on that particular thing. So if I conclude on this, if I conclude on this, how we can transit from comfort to growth zone, I'll I'll conclude in a very easy way to remember how we can work on these four things. When we talk about reframe stress, um, when we talk about reframe stress, generally when stress management comes, it's only three things that we always say. We have to work on our particular behavior. Second is thinking, and third is lifestyle. Thinking, behavior, lifestyle. TBL, right? Every person has a different approach, or let's say mantra of reframing stress. When I say I have to reframe stress, I work on TABLA, tabla. So that is a musical instrument, tabla. So what tabla here is, P is thinking, B is behavior, L is lifestyle. But our thinking, behavior, lifestyle can't become positive till the time we are not having assertiveness, and till the time we are not having a positive activating trigger. So our thinking, behavior, lifestyle should be coupled with activating trigger and assertiveness. So this is my approach of reframing stress, whether I'm going for change intervention exercises or whether I'm going for any sort of trainings or any particular project also. When we are being faced with uncertain situations, I generally prefer working with the sub lab, right? Second is prioritize. We all have worked with we all have that global experience of working with different corporates, and we are running our own businesses also. When it comes to prioritization, we all understand there are different ways of doing it, but I always prefer that we should use priority metrics where we are using four different quadrants. First quadrant, the most important task should be listed in that, do first. The second quadrant should be do next or schedule. The second set of things which can be done later in the day, but that is also of high importance, maybe the urgency is low. And the third quadrant should be the task can be delegated to someone else also. So those set of tasks should go into the third quadrant. And there is fourth quadrant. Maybe let's suppose I am not using my social media personal today, would not make any difference in my particular task, right? So those kind of tasks should be listed down in the fourth quadrant, which is prioritization of tasks. Now, practicing the power of yet. This practicing the power of yet makes a lot of difference. We generally get caught up in what we can't do or what we haven't achieved. But what if we just haven't reached our goal yet? So adding that one word of to any defeating instance widens our perspective from being hopeless to being hopeful, right? So the practicing the power of yet makes us realize that the game is still not over. We have to cover some more things in order to complete that particular game, right? And lastly, the resilience plan. So the resilience plans, as I quoted, we have to work on that particular three dimensions: the ambiguity threshold, the internal monologue, and the energy supply, which will help us to have better resilience in order to sail through that particular change. This is all from my side. Jatinder, thank you so much. Over to you. If you have any questions, I am open to take those questions.
So we have a few questions. So the first question is, with 23 years of experience in change management, what significant shifts have you observed in organizations' approach change today in comparison to when you started?
Okay, in terms of significance in the change, earlier there were no systems which were talking to each other. They were more having systems on paper. Those processes were not interlinked, and there was no proper tracking system of the performances of different departments. So when we worked on this, we streamlined each and every department's processes also, and in terms of how it is interlinked, people from management background will understand this. There is one strategic performance management tool called balance scorecard. So when we say balance scorecard, we work on four different pillars. First is your financial perspective, second is customer perspective, third is process perspective, and fourth is learning and growth perspective. And when we are defining those process and system, and even in terms of targets also, first it starts from fixing the target for the organization, the balance scorecard. Again, considering these four different perspectives. Then let's suppose if some organization has kept a target of 100 crores for this year. So those targets would be then divided into different divisions, right? I'll give you an example. If sales team work on financial perspective, they'll work on bringing in the profits through sales. Whereas for HR, for financial perspective would be on cost effectiveness, right? Again, if we take the another perspective, this um, customer perspective. The customer perspective for our HR would be mostly the internal employees or the prospective employees whom they are going to hire. Whereas for sales people, it would be the customers to whom they are selling that particular that particular product or service, right? So this is how we generally do it. We first start from the top, from the organization and the CEO. Then based on their particular, you can say, objectives, measures and targets, we fix up the others also. So it becomes interlinked. And this is how it changes. But again, just to end it up, it's not that easy the way I have conveyed it to you. Even if you plan 100% of the things, only 20% or 50%, 50 or 60% maximum, I'm saying, that gets implemented. So there need to be a lot of, you can say, sustenance of those particular practices plus audit of those practices over a period of time. Then only we are able to implement those things.
Dinesh Sharma, sir, if you can hear me, you have rights to speak, so you please may ask your question. We have one of our attendees, Mr. Dinesh Sharma. He wants to ask a question.
Thank you, Hiteshi. The presentation that you shared is very, very insightful and meaningful. As Jitendra said, my name is Dinesh Sharma. I'm the co-chair for the Toronto chapter of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. And
Right.
we are building the Toronto chapter, and in the last I would say 18 months time, we've come a long way, but the journey अभी आपने जैसे बोला कि it is yet to be completed, अभी तो सफर बहुत और क्रॉस करना है. It's not a question, it's a comment that I will request Jitendra to facilitate your introduction with my team here in Toronto, because as I said, the presentation that you did is very, very meaningful, and I think the Toronto chapter membership can benefit from your insightful presentation there too. So thank you for doing that too. Uh,
Thank you.
दूसरी बात मैं I always love to end things in a funny way, and the funny way is आपने जो बोला ना कि it's yet. So I'm a big fan of Bollywood, so I use Shah Rukh Khan's examples very much. तो वो yet का मतलब है पिक्चर अभी बाकी है मेरे दोस्त,
I
पिक्चर अभी
didn't
बाकी है.
Dinesh, sir, I didn't use Hindi because I was not aware that we, even I can use Punjabi also if you all allow. I say one thing for this yet also, Galti da Putla. I call myself as GDP. The moment I think I am Galti da Putla, I'll never stop experimenting things. And trust me,
सही बात है, सही बात. टू थिंग्स सर,
yeah,
टू थिंग्स. अभी यहाँ पर एक हम लोगों का पंजाबी कम्युनिटी का एक इवेंट था, और मैं वहाँ पर जो है वो आई मीन आई वाज प्रेजेंटिंग इट एंड आई वाज स्पीकिंग इन हिंदी, है ना. तो मेरे को किसी ने बोला कि यार पंजाबियों का इवेंट है और तो हिंदी में बात करे जा रहा है यार, है ना. पंजाबियों का इवेंट, दैट्स फर्स्ट पार्ट. एंड द सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ इट इज कि जो जो गलती नहीं करेंगे इसका मतलब कि वो कुछ कर ही नहीं रहे हैं. आप
but till the time,
करोगे तभी गलती होगी ना, कुछ करोगे तभी गलती होगी. सो थैंक यू जितेंद्र. इफ यू कुड फैसिलिटेट हितेश इंट्रोडक्शन विद मी, we will take this conversation to the next level. As you said, we would like to organize sessions, your insightful session for the Toronto chapter of PCC also.
thank you so
Sure,
much, Dinesh.
Dinesh, sir. Sure, I'll do it. I'll do it, sir.
सर मत
Dinesh,
बुलाया
sir,
करो जितेंद्र.
sure, Dinesh ji, I'll do
हाँ,
it. I'll facilitate sir's introduction with you, and then we can take thing forward.
perfect.
Before, sir, Hitesh, sir, before we wind up, I have another question to ask. So there's another question with us. How do you measure the success of change management program? What key metrics should organization focus on?
Okay, as such, if I talk about metrics, what we do is we generally define what we'll be achieving in next 1 year. So what is we are defining is what will be the end result of this particular intervention, right? Then on periodic basis, we record those things and we report it to the management of that particular organization. That in out of those 100% of the things, what are the different phases through which we are going for those particular changes, and how we'll be achieving that particular thing. What is the profit as of now, and what is the profit after a year. So as I said, the first 3 months generally is the you can say the gap analysis and co-designing things. Next 3 months is implementing those things and sustaining those things, which doesn't goes for next 3 months, but it goes for next 6 months. So 3 months plus 6 months makes it 9 months, And last 3 months is the time where we audit that out of this 100% which was supposed to be achieved in at the end of the year, but after 75% of the time we do an audit how far we have reached in terms of what kind of changes we proposed and in terms of different phases that we implemented those particular uh, changes.
Okay.
Format can't be shared right now, but generally the deliverables are defined right from the starting, where we'll
Okay.
be heading to after a year, and qualitatively as well as quantitatively it is shown to the management. In terms of
Okay.
interviews, it is like coming through the interviews is not the data part, but in terms of profits when we calculate, then it comes in terms of biggest part, how much profit has been enhanced due to this particular interview.
So I have another question. I'll pick this last question. So
Right.
you shared strategies for leaders to support their teams during change. How these can be adapted for remote or hybrid teams where communication connection are actually more challenging?
The communication connections are more challenging for any particular intervention, as Dinesh ji was also saying. The moment we are not able to establish the connect right in the starting, I'll sum it up and I'll conclude it with three C's. If we are not able to have that connect, whether it is remote or in contact, also as you have asked the question regarding remote, even if it is happening through for remote teams through online meetings or let's say online uh, educating and communicating people through trainings or through talking about different benefits also, till the time that connect is not there, we'll not be able to collaborate.
Hmm.
So it doesn't mean that we have to seriously work on that particular intervention. We have to seriously work on that intervention. That is important. But in between, some genuineness and humor should also be added. Because the remote team, we are not meeting in person. And if we talk too much about work, 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 so they'll say, yes, we are with you, Dinesh sir and Hitesh, we are with you. But inside, they'll not become a part of that. So first, as I said, connect is important. Let's
Hmm.
forget about change part first, but let's establish that connection where we know each other. The moment we'll know each other, we'll have that comfort zone of sharing the things, and we'll also try to listen to what Hitesh and Dinesh ji is saying, and we'll try to inculcate those changes. Because obviously, till the time we don't meet any person in person and we are talking over the meetings online, they'll not feel that particular connect. So through genuineness and humor, that connect can be established. Then collaborate with those people, talk about the changes that you're going to bring in phase wise. And if that connect and collaboration happens where you are involving those people offline, I have already shared what kind of steps you have to take in discovering gap analysis. But the same thing should be done here also. But it should be coupled with some training programs where more of activities or discussion should be involved. If that is there, the end result would be a celebration, right? The more interaction would be required in case of when we are when we are
The hybrid.
connecting with people online. So more number of, you can say, meetings should be there apart from the offline people. I hope I have
Oh, that,
answered.
yes, sir. You have particularly answered. So that was the last question. And on behalf of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, I would actually like to thank you for sharing invaluable insights and experience with us today. Your expertise in change management and your inspiring journey from comfort to growth zone has undoubtedly provided us with a fresh perspective of embracing change, surely for in both our personal and professional lives. So a big thank you from from the whole team of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. And I would also like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Hitesh sir. Thank you all the attendees for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jatinder, Kanak, Nitesh, Dinesh ji, Gary Pasrichari. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks.